Woman, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And do we have any commissioners who are joining us by Zoom today?
No, just Marco.
No? All right, but we do have Marco here on Zoom when it's time for him to give his report, so that's good. Thank you so much. We will go to our recognition for today. Ross Silvers, PSTA's ADA officer, will talk about a recent training on a new helpful app that helps our visually impaired customers. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited for the timing of this because today happens to be the 33rd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, when it got passed. So it's a great day to be here and tell you about some things we've been doing regarding the disability community. So back at the end of June, we had a nice gathering out at Grand Central Station of folks from the Lighthouse of Pinellas, a lot of teenagers coming out who are blind and visually impaired, as well as PSTA staff, and also our travel trainer, and folks from Lazarillo app. And so in a minute, I'm going to show you a video, and it shows from Fox News kind of what was going on there and how we're trying to move beyond ADA and beyond the minimum, as PSTA does in many ways, to better serve the community. And here we go. Do it again.
Navigating public transit can be a challenge,
I myself am legally blind.
and even harder for those who are visually impaired, like Ross Silvers, who is PSTA's ADA and Community Relations Director. Friday, Silvers and students from the Lighthouse of Pinellas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired tested an app called Lazarillo, which promises to make it a little easier.
They're here testing for the first time at PSTA an app that's being used in different places around the world to be able to help people who are low vision and blind, like myself and like these teenagers are, to be able to navigate independently.
When you open up the app, it talks to you, telling you where you are, the available bus routes, and turn-by-turn directions to get to the bus platform.
Bus stop, 62nd Avenue South and 13th Street South.
You can go places specific, like if you're more specific than if you were looking at it in another app. It's really cool. I feel like it definitely gives me more of an independence.
It's telling me where to go. 15 feet to the left.
You can also pick where you want to go based on the app's categories: food, stores, lodging, and more.
So all they have to do is say where they want to go and tap a button, and this app navigates them there, tells them how far to walk, what direction to turn.
A sense of independence.
I feel like if I use this app, I can go out by myself on my own without having, problems.
That the students say is priceless. In St. Pete,
168 feet in front to your right.
Kaylee Tracy, Fox 13 News.
So just a quick thanks to the members of the PSTA staff who are part of the Disability Accessibility ERG who helped make this event happen, our longtime partnership with the Lighthouse of Pinellas, the Lazarillo software folks for donating special setup of this software and their staff time to help train people how to use it at Grand Central, and particularly to Pat Gerard, former Pinellas County Commissioner, for first mentioning this to me so we can make this happen. And if you're ever curious to see what it's happened like yourself, just imagine the old game where you used to spin around in a circle, right, with your eyes closed, and then you're in a circle, like you're in right now, and say, okay, find your way to the chair, right? And how would you do that with your eyes closed? So having these cues are really important. So thank you for your time today, and have a great day.
All right, thank you. Fantastic. All right, next we'll go to our public comment. This is for items that are not on today's agenda. For those who would like to speak about any of the action items, we will give you the opportunity to do that when the item is discussed. If you could please fill out a green card and get it to our staff here in the front. The speakers will be recognized in the order in which the cards are received. So if you have not yet filled out one of the green cards and you'd like to speak, now is the time to do that. Once I call your name, if you could please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. The first person is Sharon Calvert. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Calvert. I live in Tierra Verde. In 2019, PSTA was heading toward a fiscal cliff, and they knew that they always needed a new revenue source to operate the Sunrunner. PSTA received millions, tens of millions of COVID funds that kept them afloat for the last few years, but now these funds are depleted. PSTA told the Tampa Bay Business Journal recently, now we're in a situation where we'll be in a deficit. PSTA is now looking to cut routes, including the Central Avenue Trolley. PSTA was warned years ago that the Sunrunner would siphon existing riders from the Central Avenue Trolley. The Central Avenue Trolley ridership has declined almost 60% and is less than half of what it was a year ago before the Sunrunner. Central Avenue Trolley riders who were paying for their rides just simply walked a block over and now ride the Sunrunner for free, courtesy of the taxpayers. PSTA's 2021 10-year transportation development plan estimated revenue from the Sunrunner to be $1.9 million in 2022 and almost $3 million in 2023. Instead, PSTA to date has received zero revenue from the Sunrunner and has lost revenue as riders on other routes now get their free to the rider rides. PSTA just approved buying 3 more Sunrunner buses for $3 million, as PSTA stated that the high ridership of the Sunrunner is on the weekends. The Sunrunner is an entertainment amenity for special events in downtown St. Petersburg and to raise games. Certainly these riders can afford to pay for their rides, so why are taxpayers forced to pay for their fares? PSTA's property tax revenue increased almost 14% from 2022 to 23 and is expected to increase almost 11% from 23 to 24. Without a millage rollback, that's a huge tax hike to property owners who do pay the PSTA property tax. In addition, until PSTA gets its fiscal house in order, PSTA needs to stop pursuing other costly BRT routes that remove valuable general vehicle lanes of traffic, such as on 34th Street South, where thousands of new apartments have been built with huge parking garages. PSTA's road diet agenda is in direct opposition to Governor DeSantis' effort to provide more road capacity in Florida. Perhaps the state needs to step in like they have with Hart Transit Agency in Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is William Lawson.
Good morning. My name is William Lawson. 407 Leilani Drive.
Oh.
We're passing it.
We could share one.
So I'm here today to talk about both a problem and a solution. My wife and I relocated from North Carolina after growing up in Lakeland, Florida, and loving coming to the beach. We moved to St. Pete Beach last October, coincidentally the same month that the Sunrunner began operating. We live on 55th or off of 55th Avenue, right across from the trade winds. And at first we thought this is a fantastic amenity. We can jet across the peninsula, we can go to the pier, we can go to dinner and not worry about parking. But I'm sad to say that 9 months later, our opinion has changed 180 degrees. And this is based upon what we have experienced living in St. Pete Beach over that time. When I am waiting at the light to turn left and I see a gentleman get off the Sunrunner who is incapacitated out of his mind, wander into the intersection and start walking circles, dodging cars and waving his fists around. We have folks who are using the Sunrunner today, unfortunately, that have turned it from an asset into a tremendous liability. And I've been hearing stories from my fellow residents about property crimes, about violence, and these are things that we're not used to experiencing in our little town of 8,000 people. So I was so concerned about these stories, right? Because these are just anecdotes, these are just stories, that I went to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office website over the weekend, and I downloaded the last 2 years' worth of crime records from the sheriff. And what you see here on the first page is the fact that the orange bars for the crime in the first 6 months of this year are taller than the blue bars, which is the same month's crime last year. We're up 36% year over year in terms of our crime. Well, what kind of crimes are we talking about? If you flip that over, you can see that we've got assaults going from a single assault in 2022's first 6 months to 10 in 2023. We've got battery and burglary up by over 20%. We've got thefts up by almost 100%. Trespass, vandalism, criminal mischief, those have more than doubled. So this is a problem. The citizens of St. Pete Beach are not sitting by idly. We're upset about this. And I can tell you that we are going to a point that's going to create a lose-lose situation for everybody, because we are paying the sheriff additional money to expand our contract. And unfortunately, we're going to have a sheriff's deputy stationed watching the Sunrunner stops, visually frisking everyone who gets off. Now, that's horrible optics for the Sunrunner. It's bad for the legitimate customers. And eventually, someone is going to claim that they were profiled. And in fact, this issue has nothing to do with race. It's entirely based on behavior, right? What we need to do, the solution here is very simple. We need to filter the riders to determine who has a legitimate reason to use this valuable service. Charge a fare. Make the Sunrunner something that you pay for when you need to use it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Arian Rutherford.
Actually, the previous gentleman spoke quite a bit on the issues that I want to speak on. It's Brian Rutherford.
Oh,
I'm
Brian,
a resident.
sorry.
Yes, no problem. I'm a resident, 7,000 Beach Plaza, St. Pete Beach, and multi-business owner. When the Sunrunner was first being talked about, we thought it was a great idea. Wife and I, the first 3 months, we took it downtown. We loved going down St. Pete, and we thought, great, it's going to bring some business also over to the island. And what we've experienced as residents there in our own home, homeless people getting off the Sunrunner, trying to sleep in our backyard on a weekly basis. We watch the crime has gone through the roof there. 40 years of sitting on the beach, never had people come up to us, you want to buy drugs? Last 3 weeks, 3 different individuals, they're in street clothes. We know they came off the Sunrunner. They come up to us, hey man, you want to buy something? We never had this on St. Pete Beach. We're St. Pete and the St. Pete area. The number one draw of this whole area is not just the city, it's the beach. And the beach has a serious problem. We're not against the runner continuing, but we are totally against it being free. The element that it is introducing, they have to have some skin in the game, people that come on the Sunrunner and come to the beach. The individuals that go to Walgreens, we're stepping over homeless people. Women are being accosted at our Publix. And as the gentleman mentions, we were advised this week, Bob came over, the sheriff came over and spoke with us in a meeting last week in our District 4 meeting, and he advised us to deal with the issues that have risen because of the Sunrunner. It's going to cost us between $200,000 and $250,000 in our budget next year. And that's just his interpretation of what he is, and he's a pro. Bob knows his stuff. He says this is what it's going to cost us. Another issue we run into is dogs. There's no dogs. Our ordinance is no dogs on the beach. And unfortunately, I've been a dog owner my whole life. The people nowadays don't take care of their dogs. They don't pick up after their dogs. Our residents are going out and cleaning up. The Sunrunner individuals, we watch them get off the Sunrunner. They're bringing their dogs. You need to put signs up to advise your clients that no dogs are allowed on the beach. At 6:30 at night, they're coming to watch sunset with their Dobermans and everything, and they're getting off the bus and going for a walk on the beach. Our ordinance is no dogs. And as the gentleman mentioned, the sheriff has already advised us the only way we can deal with what's coming to the beach is by putting an officer full-time parked right where it stops. And the sheriff has advised us that they're going to go up to every individual and say, why you here, why you here, why you here? Because we recognize the problems. So please put up some signs and let your people know that, yeah, the beach is open to everybody. It always has been. No dogs, no drunks, no drug dealers on our beach anymore. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next is John Barquette.
John Barquette. I live on 55th Avenue in St. Pete Beach. I think I have a unique perspective here. I'm not here as Chair of Transportation Committee for the Chamber, although I do hold that position right now. You know, I'm here as a resident, as a business owner in St. Pete Beach and St. Pete. I love the service. My father, myself, my son have used it to get downtown. As my neighbor said, you know, it is an amenity. I'll give you the unabashed of what I've seen as a business owner. We own a restaurant in St. Pete Beach called Sea Grapes. You know, we've seen an uptick in business. It's been great. We've had patrons that have come and made a night of coming, you know, coming to catch sunset, coming to have dinner and enjoy it and using it for all the right reasons. What's also being explained is being witnessed, and we all need to know what's happening. So we have had an instance where Sheriff's Department had to stop the Sunrunner on 64th and escort someone off the bus. So there are issues, and I've had the conversation. I want to hear more about, you know, what is happening. I understand that we want it to be successful. I'm here to be part of the solution. I just think we need to dig deeper into how it's being operated and what's going on in a perpetuity with subsidizing the Sunrunner. But I understand that we want it to be successful. So that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Max McCann?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Max McCann, 2648 3rd Avenue South. Just a couple of quick points here, because I know we have a lot scheduled this morning. I want to point out that if anybody is advocating to decrease funding for the PSTA, they are necessarily arguing in favor of a more car-centric transportation system here in Pinellas County. And that means more cars, more traffic, more pollution, more injuries, more death, more mental health problems, more isolation, more obesity, and more poverty. Let's factor that into the equation, the true costs of a car-centric transportation system when we're deciding whether to fund mass transit in Pinellas County, and you'll see that mass transit is a great investment. The other thing I want to discuss is what I think is a perception that keeping the Sunrunner fare-free is somehow an unfair handout to transit riders. I want to put this in perspective and say that considering all the handouts that we give to drivers, that's really not a fair characterization. We subsidize fossil fuels, we subsidize road maintenance and construction, we have zoning laws that require sprawling land use that encourages driving, and we have minimum parking requirements that ensure ample free parking at a driver's destination. So when you consider those things, really what we're doing is just giving transit riders a fraction of what we've been giving drivers for decades. So let's continue to fully fund mass transit in Pinellas County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last card that I have is for Kevin Sablin. And just a reminder, if you want to speak, have not been called, didn't fill out a green card, you still have time to do that. But for now, this is our last speaker. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Sablon. I'm also a bus driver here at PSTA. I've been here 15 years. I'm hearing people talk about the Sunrunner and blaming it for the rise in crime and things of that nature. It's just, we've had the beach trolley, the cat trolley running down St. Pete Beach for years. I mean, can you show me the facts, the data that says the crime has risen because of the Sunrunner? I mean, you can't say that we haven't been busing people in just now and all of a sudden the crime has risen because of the Sunrunner. I mean, you got to bring facts, you got to bring data. I mean, he had a chart showing that, yes, crime has risen, but what's saying that that's because of the Sunrunner? I mean, like the last guest just explained, there's plenty of good coming out of the Sunrunner and bringing people down to the beach that probably wouldn't have been there prior to. I just don't think it's fair to profile the passengers off of the Sunrunner and immediately blame them for issues that are coming onto the beach. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for this. I just think that there needs to be more facts and data out here to prove that that is what exactly is happening, and I don't think it's fair to profile our passengers like that.
All right, thank you. And it looks like we might have one more. Okay. Thank you. This one is Will Kashner.
I think it's Jill.
Oh, Jill, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm sorry. I had to do this last minute because
Yeah.
I'm shaking. I live on St. Pete Beach, and I look out my windows and I see what has come to our beach line. And I'm scared to death because I'm afraid somebody's going to throw a Molotov cocktail into my window because we keep our windows open, because we're the ones that call the officers to report what we see. And then they're looking up at us going, who called it in? Who called it in? We're just trying to keep our beaches safe. We have to charge for the Sunrunner. If people are paying for it, they're not going to get on and drive it around all day long for free rides. And that's what the homeless people are doing. A friend of mine went down to Red Mesa with her two girlfriends last week, and she came to our mayor's meeting to tell us the story. And apparently, a homeless person, vomited in the bus and fornicated, and they had to take him off the bus because it's a biohazard. So they had to get on another bus. She said, I can tell you every drug stop on Central Avenue where the drug dealers get off the bus and get their drugs and get back on the bus. They're just driving it all day long because it's air conditioned and it's free. If they were to charge for it, we could afford to pay to go downtown to St. Pete to see a ball game, to go to Beach Drive and have a dinner. I'm not trying to take it away from anybody. We had the bus before, and we used the other bus, and we paid the $5 fee. It being free and continuing to be free is bringing all the awfulness to the beach line. And all the business owners they were all at the meeting yesterday and explaining it all there as well. So please just take it into consideration that we're happy for public transportation. We're not saying that we don't want that for people to get out of their houses and get out of their neighborhoods, but respect it and respect our beaches. We have no sea turtle nests at all on our beach. We have one in front of the coral reef. It's awful. We have too many feet on our sand, and it's homeless people that are in work boots and heavy stomping. They're not even in bathing suits and have a towel to use the beach properly. They're just there to abuse it or to take advantage of a place they can sit and get high, and we watch them all day long, and we smell it all day long. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And yes, and I do want to thank everyone who took the time to be here today for public comment. Your remarks were thoughtful and they are appreciated. We'll go to Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All I was going to ask was if we could ask staff to communicate with the sheriff's office. Perhaps at some point we can have the data that digs a little bit deeper into the numbers that have been provided to us based on the areas where there are increases and decreases, because there are areas here where there are decreases. But without giving names, the sheriff can provide us with data if that particular arrest or stop was someone with a residence out on the beach or someone traveling on the bus. So I just would like to have that information so it would better define this. And the other thing, I just wanted to make a comment. The sheriff office can ask someone a question, but they cannot just stop and frisk somebody arbitrarily when they get off the bus. They can't just do that, and I don't think that Sheriff Bob Gualtieri would even say that, because that is illegal. You cannot stop and frisk without a probable cause just because somebody got off the bus and they look homeless. So I just want to make sure that that is clear for the persons that are here. But I don't want any of the residents here that have shared their concerns to think that they're not being heard. I just want to look at a little bit more in depth about the numbers here and how many are reflective of persons who are riding the bus. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't vote for the Sunrunner to be completely free. We put an end date on that. Am I correct?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
so, yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that as well, because it's not going to be free forever. We did make a decision to end the date that it would be a free service, so I just wanted to share that. Thank you,
And,
Madam Chair.
Just a reminder, we don't normally have board member comments after public comment, but I will indulge Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add to Commissioner Flowers' comment that when requesting data, I'd like to also request data for the full length of the beach, not just St. Pete Beach, because I think it's important to understand what's going on there, as well as understand as a comparative what's going on in the beach communities that we're not necessarily serving with the Sunrunner, to see is it a St. Pete Beach problem? Is it a overall beach problem as communities have opened up post-COVID and we have more people coming in general? So I don't want to just narrow our focus to St. Pete Beach. I'd like to understand the whole picture.
Right. Thank you. Oh, yes, of course. And Commissioner Bennett.
I wondered if we couldn't talk to our drivers and see if they are concerned about people just riding the bus from one end to the other end and getting off and not really using the bus for the service it was intended. I think our drivers might give us some comment on that.
Thank you. And it was nice to hear from one of our bus drivers today. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Brad, do you have any final words before we move on?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the board. Thank you very much for you coming, and I think at least what I heard was we do have the same goal of making it a successful service. I did reach out to the sheriff. I talked to the sheriff himself about this, and he asked if we could work on a successful solution. So I offered that we would help however we can, and some of the requests that about getting some of the data and information about this, and we want to help the sheriff solve this problem as best we can.
All right, thank you. And
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing more about that. And it sounds like this could be a great agenda item for either the board or one of its committees, perhaps very soon. And that information is shared with everyone as you get that. I think we've had some good input from the board today on what kind of information would be helpful for us to look at. All right, thank you. We'll go next to our consent agenda. Do we have any items on the consent agenda that any board members wish to pull?
Second.
All right, and did we have any, it doesn't look like we had any requests for public comment on the consent agenda. Okay, all right, if we could please open the voting system. If you could please cast your vote. And,
I'm not connecting, but I'm an aye.
okay, perfect, all right, thank you. The motion passes unanimously. And next, we'll do our committee updates. Hopefully, Mark O'Hara is still with us. He is. Great to see you, sir.
Yes, hello, good morning.
All right.
Coming to you live from Buffalo, New York.
All right.
All right. Good morning, Chair Driscoll, Mr. Miller, esteemed board members. The track met via Zoom on Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Members of PSTA's Planning and Finance Departments briefed track on the fiscal year 2024 budget challenges, as well as various service cuts that may result from the agency's budgetary restrictions. As you can imagine, being a group of transit riders and activists, we were very disappointed at the prospect of new service cuts, especially considering that Pinellas County is already so underserved by public transit. It's already difficult enough for the track members to promote PSTA service to choice riders, those who can leave a car and come and ride with us, when the majority of the routes are only running once per hour. But new cuts will make the goal even more difficult, not to mention impacting the committee members, all of whom are regular riders. The track would like to urge the board of directors to please do all that you can possibly avoid any cuts to service routes. On a more positive note, the track also received a detailed tutorial on the operation and proposed updates to PSTA's real-time bus information system. Committee members are excited about the upgrades and the fact that they will help improve information access to both riders and drivers. In addition to that, the upgrades will also improve the maintenance team's ability to remotely monitor bus functionality while vehicles are in service, so they can detect mechanical issues before the buses break down on the road. We think this is yet another fine example of PSTA being a national leader in the innovative transit technology. Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, August 15th at 4 p.m. The location of the meeting will either be via Zoom or at the PSTA headquarters. We will inform you. As always, all board members are welcome to attend. Thank you, and I'm more than happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have questions for Mark this morning? No? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your service to PSTA.
Thank you.
Next is the Ford Pinellas report, and I have that for you. The board met on July 12th, 2023, and here is the highlight reel. The board approved the annual Pinellas Planning Council budget and the millage rate for fiscal year 2024. The budget as presented is based on a projected 11.7 increase in property tax revenues and a flat millage rate of 0.0210 mils. After a discussion on apportionment plan options, the board voted to reconvene a special meeting in August to finalize and approve the apportionment plan. The board adopted the Housing Action Plan, which will create a policy framework that guides the efforts of the Housing Compact by developing a common set of policies and resources to make it easier to create both traditional, affordable housing and diverse market rate housing. The board also approved the FY 24 to 28 Transportation Improvement Program. The projects have to be included in the TIP in order to receive federal and state funding. The multimodal priority list and the transportation alternatives priority list were approved by the board, along with a letter to FDOT to expedite the I-175 project development and environmental study. The priority project lists are used in development of the TIP and for those, that funding from the feds and the state. Staff provided an update on the long-range transportation plan, which is being coordinated with PSTA's community bus plan. There's a website in development and a statistically valid community survey that has been completed. Data gathered through these efforts will be used to help identify priorities for investment, and we'll have additional public outreach in the fall. The staff also provided an update on the Advantage Alt-19 project, which will develop a redevelopment vision for the corridor that encourages the incorporation of enhanced transit service and other multimodal transportation options to link jobs, training, and workforce housing. The special workshop on that apportionment plan will be held on August 2nd, and the next regular board meeting for Ford Pinellas will be held on September 13th, 2023. That's all I have, and I welcome any questions on that. No? Fantastic. We will just move right along. All right, we have actually two action items that will be taken up together today, 6A and 6B. They're related to our FY 2024 budget. We need to approve the millage rate to advertise, and along with that, the route and other transit service reductions to advertise to the public. The Planning Committee recommended the list of route reductions for advertising and to advertise PSTA's millage rate at the same 0.75 level. PSTA's Chief Financial Officer, Debbie Laus, and Chief Planning Officer, Heather Sobush, will walk us through these recommendations. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Board. Debbie Leas, Chief Financial Officer here. You can fall asleep on me. So this morning, I'm joined by Heather Sobush and by Nick Sagan, and we're going to be talking about the service reductions to go to public hearing, as well as the proposed trim rate. I have before you what our mission, vision, values, and our sustainable strategic plan is. And the reason I put this up here is because we are a public transit agency serving the community. So when we come to you with recommendations that are very difficult and challenging for us to talk about to the public, I want us to remember what our purpose is and why it's so difficult. The two action items before you today are to identify the maximum levels of reductions that we will take to public hearing. And the other half of it is we're recommending taking the current millage rate to the property appraiser's office to be published on the trim notice. So those are the two action items for today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Good morning. So I'll be speaking to the first action item, which is that the board does need to approve the maximum level of service reductions that we'll be bringing to public hearing. So we are presenting to you the recommendations list that was approved by the Planning Committee, which is actually more than we need to cut if we wanted to maintain the current millage rate of 0.75. So we have the list of recommendations here on the right side of the slide, and then on the left is the list of ridership by route that's included in your monthly board packet. So we're recommending elimination of the lowest ridership routes that are not grant funded. And then at the bottom is something new where we're suggesting that we could eliminate about a third of our trash pickup costs. It would still get picked up, but it would have to be taken on by the member jurisdictions. This would save PSTA money and prevent the need for the service reductions. So again, we don't believe we need to implement the entire list, but we do want to bring the full list of options to the public so we can make informed decisions. So these here are the lowest ridership routes in the system. The average route carries about 22,000 passengers a month. And as you can see, these are significantly lower than this. Most are less than 2,000. So we have Route 813, which operates in Dunedin. We have Route 814, which operates in Safety Harbor. Route 90, which connects South St. Pete to St. Pete Beach. Route 32, which circulates around downtown St. Pete and serves some lower income senior housing. Route 5, which serves Fifth Avenue North, and then Route 58, which is Bryan Dairy, Seminole Roads, and they serve Carillon and the St. Pete College Seminole campus. So other service reductions and associated ridership are shown here. These include the reductions of trips on the 52LX, changing the Central Avenue trolley so that it would operate just between the pier and Grand Central Station, which is where the highest ridership is on that route, incrementally increasing PSTA access mobility on demand fares, and then reducing the frequency on Route 59, which serves Ulmerton Road, and then ending all routes at 10 p.m. instead of midnight. Combined on the last two slides, all of these reductions would save about $3.1 million and reduce ridership by about 310,000. So again, this is more than we need to do to balance the FY24 budget. This is just a map showing that service reductions. This is just service eliminations on this map. This doesn't show the incremental cuts. But they are throughout the county. You see North, Mid, and South County routes. And then, once again, the full list of $3.1 million in savings is not needed to balance the budget at the current tax rate of 0.75. Only about half, or $1.5 million, is needed. However, if the board does choose to roll back to 0.72, all of the service reductions listed would have to be done, and this, of course, will have a greater impact on the community. Now I will turn it over to Debbie again.
Heather. One of the things that's very basic is that you cannot have your expenses exceed your revenues. So when I look at this, our goal here is to come in with revenues equaling expenses. We want to have that happen rather than using reserves, because you cannot be fiscally responsible and use one-time funds to balance the budget. What we want to do is solve the problem. We don't want Band-Aids. We were challenged with this budget. We started out at about $120 million, and we brought it down by $7 million, including some of these reductions. So we first looked at everything that was non-personnel and came in and said, we still need to have some more savings. We identified the routes that you just heard Heather talking about, that are lowest performing routes, along with some other ideas. And with that, we were able to balance the budget and not lay off any employees. Despite the challenges we have, we continue to get requests. We get requests for more BRT service, continuing our TD late shift, looking at ferry services as a new mode, improving express routes to Tampa, as well as Pinellas County School Tripper service. We get even more requests from the community and from others, looking at microtransit, the 34th Street express routes, continuing the pilot program so that we have free rides for all veterans, and also supporting free service in St. Pete Beach with the freebie services, as well as getting requests to pick up more trash, not less. There's a significant number of items that we've listed here, and that's, I'm sure, not all of them. You may actually recognize some of them, because some of the recommendations to do more have come from the board. With that, I'm going to turn it over to
Heather again. So as Debbie has said, we do get a lot of requests for more and new services that we definitely would not be able to pursue under a full rollback. Instead, under a full rollback, we'd need to cut 23 routes, which would also reduce our PSTA access paratransit service area. We would have to lay off about 100 employees and eliminate non-union pay raises. We estimate this would reduce ridership by almost 2 million. And this is just a graphic, a map showing an example of how access to jobs and to other needs of the community would change under a full rollback. On the left, you see where people can get from Seminole Mall within to other places in the county within 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60-minute time frame. And then on the right, what you see is a full rollback scenario and how the access to the community would change. And now, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thanks, Heather. So I'm Nick, I'm the budget manager here at PSDA. And one of the things I love about my job is I get to come in every day and do math problems and just be a naturally curious person and make spreadsheets for anything you could think of. So being curious, I was curious, what would the most savings be for the average homeowner in Pinellas County if we did do a full rollback scenario? My methodology behind that was going to the property appraiser's website, getting some raw database files they have available, filtering out the commercial properties, filtering out the municipalities we don't tax, and saying, okay, it's pretty close to what the tax roll says, like what PSDA collects per parcel. So the average parcel for the homeowners was about $147.60 at 0.75 mils. At the rollback rate, it was $133.12. So what I came to is that at a rollback scenario, the max savings per homeowner would be $14.48. So to me, that's dinner. But to the person who relies on public transit to go and make that dinner, to get to work, that's their lifeline. And I'm going to hand it to Debbie to close this out.
So we have the two action items today that are on your listed here. 6A is to take a look at the maximum recommended service reductions that we'll take to public hearing. One of the things I want to remind you of with both 6A and 6B is these are not final. We want to get your input. We want to definitely get the input from the public and, come back with a recommendation. The second action item is for the proposed rate of 0.75 to maintain that so that we can have the least impact to the community on any service reductions that we do bring to the board. And with that, I can open it up for any questions.
All right, thank you. And just to clarify, do we need to vote on each of these items separately?
Yes, you should vote on
Okay.
the trim notice, the ad valorem tax separately.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to take public comment before we go to our discussion. We do have a few members of the public that might inform our discussion, so we'll hear from them. First and if you have not yet done so and you would like to speak on either of these items, 6A or 6B, if you could fill out a green card, it will get to me and you will get to the podium. Thanks. The first speaker on item 6A is Kimberly Cooper.
And good morning. And I assume I'm supposed to give my address to you, said?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Kimberly Cooper. I live at 1128 Crescent Lake Drive, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33701. Is that good enough? Okay. I am not a public speaker. I am a writer. That's my forte, so I'll try to do my best at speaking. First, I'd like to introduce myself to you. I am a PSTA bus rider. I stopped driving back in when I was 24. I am definitely not 24 anymore, so I have been using mass transportation, bicycling, walking for decades. I spent 19 years living on low-income and minimum wage jobs. I've been homeless twice. I also have had very, very good jobs where right now I help people with their health insurance needs. I have also spent some time doing data analyst, in the mutual fund industry and helping people with their investments. I'm not certified to give it financial advice, but I know a lot of good questions to ask. Anyway, I have never been drunk, never been homeless. I've been homeless twice. I've never been drunk, never done drugs. I smoked a cigarette one time when I was 5 years old. Never did it again because it was so horrible. At least I was told I was when I was 5. Anyway, and now I'm a senior citizen too, so I'm pretty much every single have been pretty much every single demographic who has ridden PSTA. And here's my PSTA Flamingo card to prove it. If people realized how beneficial PSTA bus service and low-cost transportation was to everybody in the community, they would be voting to increase service, not reduce it. On my experience, it takes currently 1 hour to go 3 miles. I walk 20 minutes to get to the bus because if I try to jump on another bus, I would have to leave very, very early in the morning, even earlier. Anyway, then I walk I walk a mile to the bus in the morning, and then I ride 2 miles to my job. And then I go backwards the other way. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, the bus service is reduced to an hour between buses. If I miss that bus, I end up walking a mile to the grocery store instead of waiting for the next bus, because it's faster for me to walk a mile to get to the grocery store instead of catch the next bus. If I could get to my destinations and get my grocery shopping done faster by having good transportation on Saturdays and Sundays, I would be able to enjoy going to the beaches and doing recreational stuff instead of hanging out and, within 3 miles of where I live.
Your 3 minutes is up, so if you wouldn't mind wrapping up quickly for us.
If business owners and other people realized how financially beneficial services are, the business owners would vote to increase service and increase funding. For example, my not having a car means I have a whole lot more money, thousands of money, to spend on locally owned businesses. I know locally owned businesses are the ones that keep the money in the community.
Thank you. And Ms. Cooper, you had filled out cards to speak on items 6A and 6B, so does that cover both? Okay. Then we will call you again you are next to speak on item 6B. Yes. You had filled out 2 cards, one for each item, and I'm trying to call them in the order that we received them. So you are actually also the second speaker.
Oh, my goodness. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention because I always thought I was all finished. And it's like,
No,
oh, that's over, yay.
That's fine. And so, and item 6B was on the millage rate, so the comments would be around that.
Okay, increase the
Yeah.
millage. You know what? Increasing service and increasing millage rate, they're all about the same thing, really. Okay? Having no car enabled me to have more money so that I could get 2 college degrees. I wasn't expecting this. Okay.
That's all right.
there-
You don't have to
yeah.
use the whole time. You
Oh,
can
I
stop,
will.
you know.
Hey, I could speak for hours about my experiences riding the bus and such. There have been people who are against mass transit and keeping it low cost. But the question is, the thing is, there are criminals at all income levels. So cars are bringing criminals too. The people who have more money and bigger houses, they're able to do all kinds of things inside their houses without people knowing. People who have tiny houses, you can hear the screaming from the other outside their houses. They can't get away with the things that people in big, humongous houses get away with. And people who can afford attorneys, they can get away with all kinds of stuff, just ask their attorneys to get them out of it. So there's criminals all over the place. Instead of looking at at things and saying, "Oh, we don't want those people here because they're criminals," instead let's contemplate why those things are happening. If you want to stop crimes of desperation, where somebody is eating dried beans and pancakes for weeks, for meal after meal, week after week, month after month, which I have done when I've had really low bad times, increase people's wages. If you want to stop crimes caused by wanting excitement, they're thrill seekers, just give them a bicycle and teach them how to do vehicular cycling. They'll get a lot of excitement, I guarantee you. Or find something else that's exciting for them. If you want to stop crimes, other kinds of crimes, find out what the person's reason is for doing it and then find a solution to it. The reason why I was able to prevent a lot of problems is because I do this big T, okay? And I put down I think of all the solutions possible to this problem. Number 1, what is the problem? Number 2, what are all of the many solutions? And think and read and talk to people and figure them out. And then under each one of those solutions, put down a list of pros and cons. And the St. Pete Police Department, I think, has done a fabulous job of helping with the crimes that people are seeing, and I would encourage other cities and the county too to follow the example of the St. Pete Police Department and their issues with that.
All right. Thank you very much. The next speaker on item 6B is Max McCann.
Hi, good morning again. Max McCann, 2648 3rd Avenue South in St. Pete. Okay, couple of notes. I want to urge the board to support keeping the current millage rate. And I think a good reason to do so is because a transportation system is kind of like an ecosystem. You need a variety of species in an ecosystem for it to be healthy. And in our transportation system, you need cars, to be clear, and you need mass transit, and you need micromobility like bikes and scooters, and you need walkability. And right now, cars are just such a dominant force in that ecosystem that it's choking out the other forms of transportation. And that's a big problem because only so many people have cars. And so, for example, teenagers, before they get their license, have to get shuttled around by their parents like invalids. Poor people who can't afford cars really struggle to participate in society and to get to their jobs. An important part of this, too, is senior citizens. Everybody who gets up here and asks to defund mass transit, I want to say, what are you going to do when you're too old to drive? What are you going to do? Well, in honesty, you're probably going to keep driving past that point, which is putting us all in danger. But if you do come to your senses and realize it's not safe for you to be driving because you've reached that point in life, you're not going to be able to participate in society in a meaningful way. You're going to be dependent on other people, and it's going to be awful. So please think about that when you're making these decisions. Okay. Last point, traffic violence. We've normalized the amount of traffic violence that cars have caused, and that's awful. That's a big problem. We all know somebody who's been seriously injured, if not unfortunately killed in a car crash. And here's what I want to say about that. Please listen to this. Those injuries and those deaths were largely avoidable, not just by the drivers who were involved in that collision. They were avoidable by public officials in the past who prioritized cars over people. We've got an opportunity today to reverse that and to prioritize people over cars. Let's continue to fund mass transit, and let's continue to build spaces for people instead of cars by working on things like zoning reform, which is happening in St. Pete. This is trending. We're going in the right direction. So I expect we'll see ridership levels increase. So let's not cut funding right now. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone else? No? All right, we'll close our public comment for these items and go to our board discussion and Commissioner Fig Sanders.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. This may be for Ms. Leos. I have a couple of questions. I know at the Planning Committee meeting, the idea of getting the city to participate more in trash pickup was something that we talked about last year, which is why we increased PSTA service in picking up the trash at the stops. We started having that conversation at the tail end of the planning committee, and unless I missed it, I didn't know that that was a formal recommendation from the planning committee, because I'm trying to see how, if we eliminate a third of the trash by replacing city trash pickups, have we communicated that with those municipalities that they will now be responsible for picking up that trash, and at a reduction of $170,000, who's going to cover it?
Great question, Commissioner, and thank you for bringing it up. The Planning Committee did unanimously vote on the recommendations both for 6A and 6B. These are ideas that we have on the table that we need to continue to work on to implement, whether it's working with each individual municipality. Just like the routes, we're not 100% on what routes we're going to have to reduce yet, but we still need to work with the municipalities in all honesty.
Okay, and I think that was my question, because I was on the planning committee and I was there, but I know that that would have raised a flag for me to see where those dollars were coming from, because we hadn't had that conversation yet. So seeing it in this presentation today kind of did take me. And then I was looking at the other request, slide 12, where it actually says some of the recommendations was pick up more trash, not less. So I'm looking forward to the fact that we are going to be able to engage in additional conversation as to trash, because trash is important to all of us. I also wanted to state for the record that the full rollback, I would not be amenable to anything in regards to laying off employees, no pay increases for the non-union employees, and the PSTA access service area being reduced. Those I would rather us, I know they have to be a part of the discussion and they had to be presented, but that would not be anything that I would look at wanting to move forward with. Just my 2 cents on that. And that would be my comments, Chair. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the calculation here, if I can find the screen where you did on what the average homeowner savings would be to PSTA at 1448, did you do that for commercial property as well?
I did. I don't have that number available currently. We just wanted to look at homeowners, but we did look at the commercial also. I can't remember those numbers off the top of my head.
Okay, I'd kind of like to see that, because I think that's important, because commercial property owners pay a lot more in taxes than homeowners do. They're not covered by any Save Your Homes cap, so they can, they've been getting, pretty well whacked every year on that. And I don't want to, 1448, I mean, it seems like it's an insignificant number, but it's not, because it's been compounding year after year after year after year. So I do want to make that point. And, when it comes to, what routes we're going to advertise here, I mean, I think we should, I don't see any reason that we don't advertise all the routes to get us to a full rollback, just to keep our options open. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but to keep our options open. So I think that's what we should do. We should advertise all of them for full rollback. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, I'm sorry I missed the rescheduled planning committee meeting last week, so I do have some questions that hadn't gotten answered. And the first is that if we approve all of the reductions listed in 6A, that actually would allow us to reduce the millage rate. So if we approve 6B, at that point, we would not have to make all of the reductions that are listed in 6A, is that correct?
That is correct.
And so how will we go about making a determination on which cuts not to make if we go with the current millage rate?
Excellent question, and it's going to be feedback from the public is going to be the most important piece of it, as well as we already had feedback at the planning committee on like one of the routes that we did not actually include in this presentation, and that was the Route 22. So we're very interested to hear what's most important or least important as far as impact to the community.
So that leads me to point B, and that is the 6 routes that are listed. What is the number for the 7th route on here? I see we escalate from 700 monthly rides up to 2,900. So what would number 7 be? And the reason I ask that is because all cards face up. I was the former provost to the SPC Seminole campus, and I know that during COVID, the attendance at the SPC Seminole campus dropped precipitously, and now that enrollment is coming back up. So I'm distressed to see Route 58 on this list, and would argue that should take another look based on the fact that enrollments are coming back to that campus.
Yeah, I believe the next lowest ridership route is Route 16, which is St. Petersburg, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Route 90 that you have listed here, I know we're in the process of working through our survey, but do you have any data as it relates to how many individuals of that number are using Route 90 to go to jobs on the beaches?
Yes, Route 90 has about, I think it's 4 or 5 trips that go from South St. Pete to the beach. There are about 12 to 13 people per trip that are riding in the past, when we've surveyed that route, it was mostly people going to jobs on the beach.
Is there an alternative route that those individuals would be able to catch that would get them to work?
Not as directly.
That's my.
And we are looking at options maybe to modify Route 90 as opposed to completely eliminate it, but, you know.
Because, and the reason I'm asking is because they are using it for work, and I know early on, I expressed concern with the, access to be able to even hop on the Sunrunner when you talk about north-south connectors, to connect to the Sunrunner to get down to the beaches. So if we could look at that, because the areas where some of these individuals come from to catch 90 to get to the beach, there is no other transportation. So Uber or Lyft or whatever, or cab would be the next thing for them, and that could be prohibitive based on the salaries they're making out there on the beaches. Councilmember Deborah Fix Sanders spoke to the trash issue that I was gonna ask. Because if the municipalities don't agree to pick it up, who's gonna pick up the trash? And, Brad already knows I reach out to him when I pass by a bus stop and see where it's piling up. So we certainly want people who are utilizing public transportation to do it in a sanitary method, and have that. I do not support any reduction in salaries or raises. You know, on the county side, we're looking at a 4% salary increase plus a $600 bonus. I'm not saying we voted on that, but I'm just putting out there what we talked about in our work sessions. Plus a $600 bonus because we see that our wages are not competitive enough with other governmental entities or the private sector, and we've had a concern with retention. So I have an issue with doing that, knowing what services we're providing. Those are all the questions that I have for right now. I was not able to attend the planning meeting. I was stuck on the plane on the tarmac. I was going to try to attend it via Zoom, but you can't do your phone on the plane. So I wasn't able to attend, so I'll ask the balance of my questions rather than tying up time here. I'll ask the balance of my questions. I'll give you a call and we can communicate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gao.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is the process when we decide to create a route?
I mean, typically, so we work really closely with Ford Pinellas staff, and so they do a lot of the kind of the longer-term visioning of service in the county. So I wouldn't say we've added a new route, it's just a regular fixed route recently. But we are looking at corridors that have high ridership, connections. I mean, our county's, as you all know, built out, so a lot of the connections we're already providing. But things like premium express service, we start by looking at the land use, we look at population, jobs in the corridor, and then what service we could provide to better serve that. At the present moment, that's looking at more limited express services for, you heard earlier, Alt 19, connections to Tampa, connections to Pasco. We were looking at those kind of routes for the future.
And do we have any minimum standards for a route on measuring its success? How many riders?
Well, we typically look at route productivity in terms of passengers per revenue hour. I think Brad had a comment on this as well.
Well, Commissioner Gao, I'm not sure this is answering your question, but as Heather said, not that it's been very frequently that we've been able to add routes, but there is a lot of planning that goes along through the community bus plan and through Ford Pinellas on ideas to add routes, but the key component is funding. And yes, we often get requests for new routes and look at our funding availability and realize that there's not a minimum threshold, that a route with one bus a day or, something very minimal is not enough. And we recommend against it. We don't implement that route. We get those kind of requests all the time. Can't we have a bus service that goes to the airport from Clearwater Beach? We get that, that's our number one request all the time. But that is a very expensive type service because, as Commissioner Flowers just described, I mean, airplanes go at all 24 hours a day, basically. You have to have a lot of buses to do that. And we just don't have the funding. So a key component to adding service is identifying the funding. And that's what this discussion is about. Yeah.
And so when we add a route, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of discussion around funding on how we implement a route.
Correct.
For any of these routes, and we do not have a minimum standard on, once we've created a route, whether or not it's successful or not, until it's budget time. Right? Do we sit around in March and look at those routes and think about what we should cut?
I mean, we regularly analyze our routes and we keep track of their productivity, and you're gonna hear in a couple months when you're gonna have a presentation on the community bus plan, which is looking at all of the routes in our system, that some routes exist for more coverage purposes, versus those frequent routes. And so, we have routes in like Safety Harbor, we have routes, there's one route in Dunedin. Dunedin has multiple routes, but, that don't carry a lot of passengers, but the people who do ride are riding because they need the service. And there tend to be infrequent
I'm sorry,
hourly routes.
could you repeat that last part? I'm sorry.
I said that they don't tend to carry a lot of riders, but they're providing coverage in certain communities, that maybe the land use is more suburban. But the riders who do ride are riding because they need the service.
The riders that need the service. Okay, thank you. I just want to make that point. And so whenever you're looking at a route that may be deemed marginal, do we put that same type of passion, conversation, analysis into how we can increase the ridership along that route?
I mean, yes. I mean, we do try to, when we created those routes in Safety Harbor, Oldsmar, and Dunedin, we did do a lot of marketing and reaching out to the community to advertise the services. Of course, we want them to be successful here at PSTA. So, we continue to try to reach out to the community and make sure people know that it is available.
Okay. And looking at the list of routes, and let's say we vote for them and get rid of these routes, next year budget time, are we going to have a list of other routes? What can we cut?
I would hope not, no.
Yeah, I would hope not either, right? Because I just have a really big concern that we are going in the wrong direction. And Max McCann is becoming a huge fan of mine, president of the Max McCann fan club. Because he is insanely on point. And that's something that each and every one of us should be recognized and understand that PSDA is just one aspect. And we should be talking about bikeability, walkability. Cars are necessary, but we are so car-centric. We're talking about Route 813, 831 in Dunedin. That supports an over 55 retirement community that is lower income. They get vouchers to stay there, that is managed by Pinellas County. And we're getting ready to cut that route. And for these seniors that need the ridership, it's not a want, it's a need. I don't know what I'm going to tell them, except sorry. That really does bother me. And I know that all these routes are for the same reason. And for some reason, we think that public transit is stuck on this low bar that it's only for the people who need it. That I think public transit, one, should be for everybody should be riding it, but even for those that don't ride it, they benefit from PSTA. For each one of those riders that are on a bus, they're in a car, and they're not in a car. So it goes back to that question of diversibility. The Central Avenue trolley, I believe the low ridership there is because of the Sunrunner, right, that everybody transferred. You heard the comments earlier about because Sunrunner is free, there was a great migration from the Central Avenue trolley. And so is this a benefit to cut that route? Because now if we implement fees on the Sunrunner again, are they going to migrate back to the Jolly Trolley or the Central Avenue if it's there? Or they won't be able to make that? And so are we cutting things off before we really have a clear picture of the Central Avenue trolley and the benefit of that? As far as and I don't know, and I'm digressing, Chair, is this just questions or Now I'm holding everybody hostage. Is this also comment time?
Both.
Is it both? Okay, I just want to make sure where I stood, so thank you very much. As for the millage rate, and whether or not this involves commercial, whether or not the amount back to me as a resident is truly actual or not, we'll talk in generalities. That $14, I don't know about anybody else on this board, but that does nothing for me personally when I compare that to my homeowner's insurance. And I'm telling you, it seems like we're giving somebody who is dehydrated and overheated a spoonful of water just so we can feel better about ourselves and saying, you know, we did what we could for you. I don't know what I'm going to do as far as the personal decision when I get my next homeowner's premium. I really don't know. And so if PSTA needs my $14, please take it. Please take it, but do not feel that by giving that money back to our residents, we are helping them in spite of inflation, in spite of homeowners insurance, in spite of where we are in our college debt, homeowner affordability. And please understand, this is $14 a year. A year. I know we looked at the rollback in Dunedin, it would be $40 for our residents. A year, compared to what PSTA could be doing with that money, and to understand that public transit is a public transportation system. And if we're really committed to Vision Zero, if we're really committed with our schools, safe streets to school, we need to start talking as though we really are, and PSTA is a large part of that. We have a lot of blame to go around on where we are in our car centricity. Our roads are designed for cars. They're designed for our cars to go as fast and as efficient as possible. And so a lot of our safe routes to school, a lot of our Vision Zero problem is actually road design. But it takes conscious thought to change that mindset, but that's where we need to go. So this morning, I cannot, if we say, back to a question, Debbie or whoever, if we vote no on these route recommendations, what would be your next step? Where would we go?
We keep looking for savings within the budget, but there's not a whole lot that we can do. I mean, we keep looking, because this is hurting us as much because we're in the business of providing the service. And we know that every single route, which, as you well have seen, somebody has a story about it. But, we're going to, I honestly don't know. We run so lean here. We're one of the most cost-effective transit authorities in the country. Like, our belt is tightened. I keep looking to tighten more.
And you had a comment earlier, and it's in the presentation, rather than solving a problem, we're using on-time funds, reserves as a Band-Aid. And I interpret that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not your recommendation to have these cost savings come out of reserves.
That is my recommendation. And the reason why is, again, you're not solving the problem. And if you go ahead and you use that, our unrestricted reserves right now are at about $2.4 million. That is not a lot for an organization of this size. And all you're doing is kicking the can down the road, and as you said, what are we going to do next year? If we do cut something this year, and, maybe it's not enough, and we end up doing that and doing something that's not a balanced budget, then we will be coming back and saying we need to cut more routes next year, which is something we all don't want to do.
Okay. I can't disagree with you, and for what I've done in my private life personally, reserves are gold, and we need to keep that. But it's a lot like fighter planes, that you have a reserve that you don't go in unless it's a time of war. It seems to me that, yes, it would be a Band-Aid, but I look at cutting those routes as a Band-Aid as well. And I don't support balancing budgets on the backs of employees and cutting wages. I don't support balancing, because that's what we're doing, we're balancing a budget. What do we do to balance the budget? Well, let's get to some routes. Those aren't numbers, those are riders, those are people, those are citizens of our county. And that's their only way to get around. And I don't know how they're gonna get around. Certainly, they might take another route that might be close by, but you heard Kimberly talk earlier this morning about how she has to walk a mile, 2 miles, out of concern on the timing of our bus routes. And it should be that we should be focused on how are we gonna get all of our routes to 10 minutes. And that, to me, that's my overall goal, is that you shouldn't be concerned about missing a bus, because if you do, you're now late for work and your work is jeopardized. It should be, okay, there'll be another bus coming back in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And to me, that's where public transit should be. So I will not be supporting either of these action items. I think we'd rather focus on, when it comes to the trim rate, how many communities in Pinellas County do not participate in the millage? And I think we should be focused on being revenue driven. I know Josh spoke about this at the committee meeting. Sorry if I'm stealing his thunder, but he's absolutely right. That for those communities that do not participate in supporting PSTA, they need to understand that PSTA benefits everybody in the county, even for the members in those communities that choose not to support PSTA. So that's the story we need to be telling. And with that, I'll yield my time back, and I'm sorry for the soapbox.
It's all right. Thank you. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of questions and a couple of comments. When we're looking at the route reductions, and I know we talked about this at the planning committee, and I appreciate us removing the Route 22 for consideration. Are we also looking at route configurations as well? Because you commented that we might be looking at something different with the 90. And I wonder, I'm looking at, I heard Commissioner Flowers' comments, and was wondering how we can connect those communities better to where they're trying to go. And so, looking at like the Route 20, it kind of takes this, it comes from South St. Pete, takes the circuitous path downtown, goes a little bit north, then goes out to Tyrone, and it becomes a relatively inefficient route versus potentially being a better connector north-south to, from South St. Pete directly to the Sunrunner area as opposed to going downtown, then directly to the 22 so that could be taken out to Tyrone Mall. And thereby allowing more frequency potentially on that route or a reduction in cost. So I just wasn't sure, when we look at these route eliminations, how much of that is also going to be route reconfigurations? And I also realize we have the community bus plan that's going to fill.
Yes, and that is where a lot of that work will be done. So we're just the timing of everything. We have the budget, and then we have the bus plan, and the bus plan's going to start with public outreach in the fall. We've already concluded the onboard survey. We don't have results from it yet, but so the onboard survey looks at where people go to and from. So it's origin and destination. And so that is supposed to inform, maybe we do need to tweak some routes so they're more direct. We definitely have, and we've told the consultant we want to look at how are we connecting to the Sunrunner, and can we reconfigure some routes to have better connections to the Sunrunner. So all of those things are on the table with that process. Right now, for this budget conversation, we haven't looked a lot at reconfiguration because we're just trying to solve for making sure we balance the budget. But that will be coming for sure.
I don't recall, what was the timeline for the preliminary community bus plan reporting?
I believe it's August or September.
Okay, so it's coming up.
Yes, it's soon. They finished up in
The survey.
late June. They finished up the survey, but they have to do all the processing of
Understood.
the results.
And I also realize that these recommendations aren't made willy-nilly. There's, each one of them is heartbreaking to do, and there's a realization that it affects real people in their real daily lives. And so, but we do have to marshal our resources and use them the best way that we can. I also wanted to comment that, because I heard some comments about that these are voting to get rid of these routes. And my understanding is they're not. they're voting to go to public discussion to potentially eliminate these routes. Is
Correct,
that a
correct.
better
And that's
descriptor?
why the list is double what we actually need to cut. We need to
Understood.
cut about 1.5, and the list is about 3.1.
Right, so this list will be coming back here with feedback from the community.
Yes.
About what and whom will be impacted the most, so that we can make a better informed decision. We just had to narrow our focus to which routes are we gonna ask about.
Correct, and I know marketing is working on an outreach plan for this whole discussion.
And another item I know we've talked about, and I mentioned at the planning committee, was also, and this kind of ties into the millage rate, but is looking for additional revenue from other sources. And I brought up at the last board meeting, the question as to whether the county commission would take up funding the $400,000 shortfall for veterans to ride free. And I don't know if that, I know the county budget's 60 million plus. I believe it's more than 60 million increase this year. And I don't know if that's been brought up as a priority for citizens to have on the county level, is to provide that as a transit option for veterans. But I'm still interested in looking at those different revenue sources. I know we've had, Commissioner Gao brought it up, but talking to, trying to bring those municipalities back into the fold that are not members of PSTA, but we still serve those communities, I think is important. Overall, I'm still, as I've been the whole time, in favor of keeping the millage rate at the same rate. If we look forward to future budget years, we're going to need the extra funds, and we can't increase past the 75 millage rate in the future. So building those resources now makes sense. But I did want to, because I think there's a misconception with taxes and how they work, and I realize many of the folks here deal with, as taxing authorities, deal with the property values and whatnot. But when I hear that there's no cap for commercial properties, there is a cap for non-homesteaded properties in Florida. It's a 10% cap, not a 3% cap, but there is a cap on values. When we hear people talk about how personal taxes are subsidizing transit, the homestead exemption, the 3% cap on homesteaded property, is a subsidy to homesteaded families that live here, where other families that are just moving here, they pay that tax. Renting, people that rent, pay that tax through their rental income or a rental expense. So, I want to be very careful when we start pointing fingers at who's getting a subsidy and who's not getting a subsidy. We're all getting subsidies. We just get them in different ways. And it's important to realize that when looking at this policy. So with that, I yield back my time back to Commissioner Gao, because I think he might, no, just kidding.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues on the board. Thank you, Commissioner Gao, for your impassioned presentation. And I will join as the Vice President of the Max Fan Club. We're on service reductions. I remember going through this as a new board member, I believe it was in 2018 or in that vicinity, Mr. Miller, when we were addressing service reductions. And the same numbers, the same routes are coming up. 813 and 814 weren't there then, but 90, 32, 5, 58, 22, I think 20 was thrown in on that one too, if I'm not mistaken. And ultimately, we decided we found ways to not reduce service. And I think that is absolutely essential that we do this again. I want to speak to Route 92 that Commissioner Flowers spoke about, was that Route 90 goes really around my neighborhood down 54th Avenue South, MLK, then over to Roy Hanna, and then down 31st Street. And there are many apartments there that folks work at the we have to understand St. Pete Beach, the people that live on St. Pete Beach, for the most part, don't work there, all right? They have to import help from other parts of the community. And a lot of folks do work there, especially the trade ones, because they're identifiable by their tropic attire. And I see that, And I know 90 is essential because a lot of folks live down this way and they can't get that way to get up there, either to the Sunrunner or another, to Grand Central to get over to the beaches. So I think that only runs 4 or 5 times a day. I know it doesn't run much, but I think it's essential to keep that. And as Commissioner Oliver spoke about Route 58, we had quite a few folks here speaking to keep that, because not only the St. Pete College campus, but also along 58th, or correction, off of Brian Dairy Road, you have you have the Star Center, you have Bardmore, all the medical facilities there. And there's a lot of businesses that people that ride public transportation need to get to, as well as the college. So, again, I'm absolutely, adamantly opposed to any service reduction. I'd like to go to page 10 on, not 10, whoops, no, keep going here. The recommendation, this page 16. And I serve on the planning committee as well as finance, and we all voted to approve 6A, but I'm going to, excuse me, go down by each item here. First item, bullet point, eliminate the 6 very low ridership. I'm totally opposed to that. Central Avenue trolley and other route reductions, 59, 52LX. Frankly, I like 52LX when I used to go to, from St. Pete and ride the bus up to the county courthouse for Board of Adjustment meetings. I used to do that too. But the bottom line, that needs to be looked at more, especially CAT, because we know the impact that Sunrunner has had in reducing that. And so that would, need to be looked at. Also look at elimination of evenings hours after 10. And then I would be absolutely in favor of incremental increase of PSTA access fares. Actually, immediate increase of PSTA access fares on the MOD. We can do that. We can make that even with what those pay on the access paratransit. They pay $4.50 each way. MOD is more attractive because it's $1 less each way, and that would generate over $200,000 in revenue a year. That alone, right there. And then also is the incremental increase as it was coming to the frequent riders on the MOD, Mr. Miller. If that was the proposal, I understood it, that the paratransit consultants suggested to do incremental increase by, or is that?
Start with this, yeah.
Yeah, to start with that, and that would, number-wise, that would probably mean about $85,000 a year. If you take 5,000 rides, multiply it times the average fare on MOD that we're paying to, like, Lyft is the one I use, it was $17.35. So multiply that, and that's about $85,000. But I do believe that we can save money in our paratransit fares. And I'll go to 6B. I am adamantly supportive of continuing the 0.7500 millage rate. We got to understand that we're, in the United States, PSTA is possibly the lowest funded, or if not the lowest funded, near of 100 agencies that transport 1 million, we're in a population area of 1 million or more. We're at the dead bottom in funding, and that just ain't right, We travel to San Antonio, we take public transit, we go to Seattle, we go to Portland, and it's there, man. My grandkids, I demanded, this was about 3 years ago, 3 or 4, that, hey, guess what we're doing today? Got on the train, got on the bus, got on everything. And And it's just important. I mean, and I was so pleased to hear my colleague, Commissioner Gal, with his passion and his support for his community. I used to live in Dunedin. Jeff, I know those areas you're talking about, that folks that don't have need. You know, we tend to forget that. We try to think of ourselves, and that's not why we're here. You know, we're here to take care of other people, and especially those that don't have. And, I mean, really, that's all I have to say, but I appreciate your time.
All right,
Madam
thank
Chair,
you.
thank you.
Commissioner Latvala.
Thank you very much. I was just going to quickly respond to Commissioner Schulman. The county commission has not talked about paying for the Veterans Fair because that policy was passed by this board, not the county commission. So there would be no need for us to do that. And it was passed overwhelmingly by this board. But using your logic, if the county commission, if that was for some reason reversed or whatnot, and the county commission were to pick up the tab, using your own logic, that would, I guess the county commission would then take that money from the city that appointed you to this board. But I have some questions for you, Debbie. I remember maybe a year or two ago, there was, shortly after the Sunrunner came out, there was a big party, and I think I was even invited to it. I did not attend it, at the beach somewhere, celebrating the opening of the Sunrunner. How much did that cost?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can certainly get it to you.
Please do. And I think there might have even been another celebration at like a 6-month anniversary or something like that. If you can get, if that was the case, if you can get that cost. And Brad, do you know how much that party cost that I'm referring to?
Well, we'll get that information, but it's my understanding that actually it cost PSTA nothing because we got sponsors. Some of the like the contractor and the bus manufacturer paid for the opening day thing, and then we had an event down in St. Petersburg for the 6-month anniversary to announce the new station that this board had voted for, and but that was just, there wasn't really any expense to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know throughout the year, PSTA does a lot of free rides for holidays and festivals, which is, I think, a good idea. Do we know what the cost or the revenue lost for those things would be? For like New Year's Eve and different things like that that we give free rides to?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but, you know, that's something we can try to extrapolate out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So my homework assignment, which it sounds like Brad's completed number 1, thank you, Brad, was that it really didn't cost us anything for the event on the opening day last October. And then the second piece is lost revenue on any free free ride days.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
I also have just, Commissioner Scott, we, maybe Nick can come up, we did some little research. Everyone was chatting on your question so that you could have an answer on the commercial property. You've got better eyesight than I do.
So instead of 1448 average homeowner savings, if we included the commercial properties, it's $19.08.
So the commercial properties owners only save $19.08.
Well, everyone on average.
If you include.
Right, if we included the commercial properties in that, in that average savings.
That tells me my commercial property.
Yeah, I could tell you on average what commercial properties pay PSTA, would pay PSTA at 0.75 mils this tax year,
Okay.
and it's about $1,000 a parcel.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Before we go to our next round, I'll ask my questions. With the elimination of part of the trash collection, my question is about the cities that would, if that goes back to the cities that are the city responsibilities, which cities would be affected by that? Brad?
That's a good question. We're putting that information together now. We have trash cans in almost every city, every municipality in Pinellas.
Right, but you're talking about 1/3, eliminating 1/3. So is that all in St. Petersburg? The reason I'm asking is because I think that is something that's fair to put to the cities, but we're working on our budget right now.
Right.
And if we're gonna take that back over, we kind of need to know how much it costs before we go to our public hearings in September.
Right,
So if we can get that information for all the cities sooner than later, it will give us an opportunity to best partner for a solution.
We have I will be sending to you, hopefully later, maybe even today, or certainly this week, to all of you and to all of the contacts we have with the cities that are working on your budgets, on the number and the locations of all of the PSTA trash receptacles in each of your municipalities. And as Commissioner Fixander said, we have not had that much discussion with the cities yet on this. The reason that we put 1/3, the total cost of trash pickup at PSTA is $500,000. So we put 1/3 in here because we knew that this was going to be an incremental, or I assumed there would be an incremental process, that some cities might be able to do it, some maybe not, maybe we keep talking to them. About 2/3 of all of the trash cans that PSA picks up are in St. Petersburg and Clearwater. And then it's something like, if you add Pinellas Park and Largo, then you get to be like 80% of the trash pickup. Some cities only have one trash can, some of the beach communities and things like that. So, but I'll send you all of that so you can see, and maybe there's just a more efficient way to collect the trash at these trash cans than by PSA's contracted service. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, the majority, the biggest is St. Petersburg. I think it's like 40-some%.
Thinking we're not one of those one trash can towns. So, because the number could be somewhat substantial, I'd like to have that, give us the chance to make an offer to help with that part of it. Part of me, I'm not in favor of service reductions, of course. We want to provide more, not less. But what we do provide, we have to make sure we're doing it in a smart way. And I know that a lot of thought was put into this list, and it's a difficult list to have to make because it's about going with less. I do think that we need to spend more time looking at what else could be done besides service reductions. For instance, there was the example that with Route 90, there could be consideration of modifying rather than eliminating the route. I'd love to know what that looks like. If that is something that is connecting South St. Pete residents with the beaches and mostly for their jobs, we need to just ask, what does better look like that can be within what we can afford? We have to, and is it that some of them, with some, it's just getting easier access to the Sunrunner? But if it's going at 54th Avenue South, it doesn't make sense to look at how do we get folks from 54th Ave South to the Sunrunner. So I think there's a way to solve that problem by rerouting and not eliminating that. And I would have a really difficult time supporting that elimination. There are others, and my colleagues from other cities and other parts of our county have given really, really good reasons for maintaining some of the routes that are there. These are routes that get people to their jobs, gets them to educational resources. And really helps to promote our local economy, if you think of it in terms of countywide. It helps get people to so many different things that they need. And yeah, some of those buses are carrying a relatively low number of people. So again, I think we have a lot of opportunities to see how can we still meet those needs and maybe, do something in a more efficient way. And I think it's just a matter of taking a closer look at where people need to go and why. And having a little bit more personalized approach, looking at each route and why it's special, not just the ridership number and if it doesn't hit a threshold, then it gets the axe. I think there are other options here.
I think between the community bus survey, between public hearing, and again, this is an options list, we certainly want to keep whittling it down. We don't want to do all of this. We only want to do as least amount as possible. I think we'll find, some of the answers to your questions between all of that so that we can have ways to approach employers, municipalities, other
All right.
areas that can be partners with us.
Okay, and to clarify, voting, yes, so on item 6A, on the service reductions, voting yes means moving this to public hearing so that we get the public input, and this becomes a conversation that's bigger than the board.
Correct.
That's what I'm in favor of, and that's why I'm going to vote yes on that. It's not because I want these service reductions. I want us to keep talking about it and finding a better way. Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the elimination of evening hours after 10 o'clock p.m., if you could, if you've already looked at this in the planning committee meeting, I apologize for being repetitive. But if you could provide maybe some background on that, because most people, if it's after 10, other than when we have the holiday things, which really keeps people who are inebriated off the road, which reduces the number of DUIs. We had that conversation here and was given those numbers once before. But we have a number of businesses that are moving into the Caroline Center. We have a number of businesses that are moving out by Gandy that are opening. You have Amazon folks right next door here, where one of my sons just got a job from 4 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning. So if he didn't have a car, he'd be, not necessarily looking at catching a bus at 3, but, it would help him out. So anyway, I would like to see what that would look like, because we are having conversations through our Tourist Development Council or our chambers about recruiting businesses to come here. And one of those recruitment pieces is public transportation. So if we're going to look at reducing those service times, where they may have 3 shifts or 2 12-hour shifts, then we need to start changing our conversation about what we are sharing as an amenity for them to move here. So I just want us to look, just if you could provide some data on that. We have partnered with St. Pete College and with the school system about their ability to catch the bus. I know Dr. Williams has spoken highly. Thank you, Councilmember Oliver, for saying it, but she's spoken highly about how students are getting to and from and how they're really utilizing the service. And so I'm just concerned about those routes that would go by or pick up and then transcend over to St. Pete College up in the Seminole area. So if we could maybe have if you have some numbers. I know it may be difficult to capture the data, Brad, but it would be real advantageous if there was a way that we could, in fact, capture how many people are riding that are either teachers or students with PSTA from the Pinellas County School System, and/or how many are utilizing the bus service that attend St. Pete College. But I'm really interested in those evening service hours, because if we're gonna look at potentially, then that we need to start changing the conversation about what we're listing as an amenity to
Yes.
companies when we're trying to attract them to move here.
It's about 9,000 monthly rides. About half of the routes that have late night service are the trolley routes, including Jolly Trolley. And then that is just the biggest bang for the buck in terms of savings. It would save us about $900,000 to not provide that service after 10. I do not have specifics on how many of those riders might be students for either, any college. But the survey from the bus panel will hopefully give us some of that information.
Okay, yeah, so you're primarily talking about the Jolly Trolley for the after 10 service?
It's Suncoast Beach Trolley, Central Avenue Trolley, there's 3 Jolly Trolley routes, and then some of our core routes, like the 52 run after 10 PM.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to put a little historical perspective on this here. I was recently viewing a short video clip of the presentation of the 2013 Community Bus Study, which showed that about 6 of the PSTA routes accounted for 60% of the ridership. And that's pretty much where we're at today. I mean, that situation hasn't changed since 2013. And back then, the entire topic of discussion was Greenlight and what that was going to do with the additional money that was going to bring to the table. But when Greenlight didn't pass, we didn't really make any changes. And here we are today at this crisis inflection point because we didn't do anything about that. In my opinion, that's just kind of a lack of planning. I mean, we saw this coming. But in that almost 10 years that's passed, we've managed to add about 20 buses to the fleet, another 80 employees or so to the payroll, managed to increase the budget. But the difference is that our ridership has dropped 40% from that point. I mean, that's just the reality that we're faced with here. We should have been making incremental evolutionary changes to these routes all along the line there, and we haven't done it. And now we're at this crisis point where we've got to make this difficult decision that nobody really wants to do, but it's just the absolute reality that we're faced with. So we've been, in my opinion, as a board, sort of been enabling bad behavior because we've been providing the maximum budget that we could every single year. If we don't make a change, we're going to continue to get the same results going forward. So that's just the reality of where we're at. It's tough, but we've got to make some tough changes here. And I just want to make another point here too, that nobody likes laying off employees, but this is not a jobs program. This is a transit agency. And so where are we going to get money in the future? Everybody's talking about maybe we can get some funding here or there or where else, but I brought this up a couple of months ago, and I really think we're at that point where we need to look and see if there are savings opportunities by contracting some or all of PSD out to the private sector. I mean, that's not a question. We don't have the answer to that question. How can we make informed decisions if we don't have the answer to that question? We've never, ever asked it. We may find that doesn't bring any cost savings to the table, but we may find that it does. But I think that's a question that we need to ask going down the line here. So, nobody really wants to make these changes, but we saw this coming. We haven't made incremental changes the way we should have. And now we're at a point where we've just got to make some darn tough decisions. And if we don't do it, we're just kicking that can down the road. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. As we're discussing it and listening to everybody, we're looking at charging for the Sunrunner or not, one or the other. Have we looked at how much charging for the Sunrunner would bring to the table for this?
Yes, we've estimated that once we start implementing the fares on the Sunrunner, that'll bring in $200,000. $200,000 a year.
All right. Looks like that's all for the discussion. I think,
I move approval on item number 6A for service reductions as presented, to have public discussion on that.
all right, we have a motion and a second to approve item 6A. Seeing that there's no further request for a discussion, could we open the voting machine, please? Board members, cast your votes, and we have,
We're missing one.
Bennett?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes 12-1.
Move approval of item 6B as presented for 0.75 mils
Second.
for public discussion.
Second.
All right, so we have,
I'm sorry.
Saraki. So we have a motion and a second to approve item 6B. Could you please open the voting machine? All right, board members, please enter your votes. And Albritton? Okay. We don't have Albritton up there. I don't see him.
He's not listed.
I've checked them off. It's not showing up on here. but
Okay, Commissioner Albritton, could you please share your vote?
Yes, okay.
We'll have to, we'll manually make sure that on the minutes
Okay.
it shows it. It's
Could
not-
you announce the results then, for the record?
It's 11 to 2.
All right, so the motion passes 11-2. All right, thank you. We'll go on to item 6C. We'll hear from Raj Singh, Assistant Manager of Schedules, and Al Burns, PSTA's Procurement Director, who will walk us through this major technology update. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Al Burns, your highly motivated Procurement and Budget Director. First, I want to thank you and the board for passing the previous action items, the items that were on consent, because it's all one big package. Earlier this month, Brad came to me and he said, Al, I want you to give a tour of all the stuff that we're doing. And me being motivated the way I am, I said, absolutely, yes. And then I sat back and I got with my colleagues, Greg and Henry, and I was like, how are we going to do this? And we came up with a plan. But before us, I noticed the finance chair exited, and I'm sure he's going to come back. But he was like, hey, Al, I'm really, really excited about this tour. And I think after the tour, I'm looking at the finance committee members, and I think they learned a lot about this organization. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is the professionalism over in our transportation division and throughout the agency overall. And all the items that were presented at the finance committee were all unanimously approved. But we wanted to make sure with such the high dollar amounts that we came and we presented these items to the full board of directors this morning. And these are two of the highest dollar value contracts. Before my colleagues, Raj and Henry, come up and go through the technical portions of these action items, I just want to do a historical look back. And if you think about it, we've been talking about a lot of these action items that I'm going to be asking for approval this morning for a long time. Some of these items haven't been updated for a number of years, 5, 7 years, and they're becoming obsolete, and my colleagues are going to talk to you about it. At the end of the day, these items that I'm bringing before you, or that we're bringing before you rather, we need these items in order to operate. If these items don't get approved, like my colleague, Mr. Lukasik said, we're going back to the old Stone Ages, so to speak, or I would say we're going to go dark, and it's going to significantly impact the agency and our ability to be able to function so efficiently. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Raj, to go through some of the technical aspects.
Good morning, Board. Thank you, Al. My name is Raj Singh. I'm the Assistant Manager at Scheduling here at PSTA. And like Al said, these are needs for PSTA to function on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to talk to you about the Clever Device software that we asked for the contract to not exceed 4.5 in the recommendation. What is Clever Devices? Clever Devices is the technology on the bus with three iterations of IVEN, which stands for Intelligent Vehicle Network. There are computers on the bus since 2009, so a little over 12 years. And the first iteration of the IVEN 3s came on board in PSTA in 2009-10. It was rolled out. And they're still on the vehicle. We've got some of the IVEN 4s, which came on board in 2013 and 14, and that is also coming to end of life. And the new turnkey, the buses that start to come in now, is getting the IVEN 5. With that said, all of the buses that's out there, over 60% of them have the IVEN 3s on them, which is obsolete. They are not functioning properly. My good partner Henry, you will hear from later on, have put some Band-Aids on them just to get them through, but they are going dark. The operating system on them is obsolete. They are on Windows XP or 95, something to that nature, which you know does not even get supported by Windows anymore. So these are the things that we need to function. And it supports the CAD system, which is the computer-aided dispatch, which members of the committee, the Finance and the Planning Committee saw on the tour in operations, that allows them to see what the buses are doing on the road. So here's a shot of the buses, what the dispatchers see on the top left, and the top right is the maps where all the buses are located all the time in the county. And just want to point out the screen in the middle is one of the features of this system that allows, when there's an emergency on the bus, it opens up, the driver presses something, and this screen comes front and center to the dispatchers, which allows them to know and to deal with that situation. So these are some of the things that is going to stop functioning, right? As you can see on the map, some of the icons are black. Those are buses that's having issues, that's going to go dark. And that's when you are out there in the real world as a customer and you're trying to find where's your bus. As you've seen in the passenger real-time information, this is a shot on the left side with the real-time. These buses are black because they stop communicating. And if you're a customer at a bus stop looking for your bus, there is no information being transmitted anymore, and that icon will start to disappear. So these are some of the things that we're looking to upgrade to the IVEN 5 platform, have all of the buses on the same heel of operating system, and they will give us some enhanced features, which is beneficial to the public and to feed information to the transit app and all of that. So these are things that the drivers will see a difference in to help self-dispatching, that there, as you saw in the tour, there's a little computer over the driver head that he can see his spacing along the corridor of the route that he's traveling, and that will enable some mapping software like you do when you plan a trip with GPS. However, the driver will not interact with that. It's just going to be for informational purpose, so that way he can stay on route and not get lost, and it improves for the driver and the customer experience, where they will get to where they got to go on time and improve on-time performance. With that said, I'm going to let my colleague, Henry Lukasik, talk to you about the hardware on this project.
Good morning, members of the board. Henry Lukasik, Director of Maintenance. I also want to echo thanking the Finance Committee members for coming on our tour. As you know, I'm a fan of bringing props and show and tell to Finance Committee, especially to give people an opportunity to see what exactly it is I'm talking about. And as Finance Committee members know, at the tour, I had we call it a bus in a box. It was basically a working model of all of the equipment that I'm going to try and explain to you on this screen here. So everything that drives all of what Raj talked about, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, that's mostly driven and reported into by what's on the left-hand side of your screen, which is on the bus. A couple of key terms just to get quickly through. TCH stands for Transit Control Head. That is what the operators actually use to receive all this information. It's basically a television-type screen. That's touch screen. And then IVN 5, Intelligent Vehicle Network Generation 5. Think of that as the brains on board the bus. And it's not just reporting in real time or other stuff. Also on the bus, there's other ITS technologies such as farebox camera systems, destination signs, the Flamingo system, automatic passenger counters. Those all can be controlled independently, but they all require logins and such. When you integrate all of those systems into this network, the operator only has to log in once, and then everything else is seamlessly controlled by the system itself. I want to point out the cellular wireless modem. I think a great question came up at the Finance Committee, which was, if we upgrade these buses with this new equipment, will the real-time reporting get better and quicker? I believe that came from either Commissioner Gao or Commissioner Schulman, or maybe both. And the answer to that question is yes. And I made the comment then, which is that we are only as fast as our slowest equipment. And right now we have lots of antiquated cellular modems out there reporting in information. So once we get everything on a level playing field and across the board the same, yes, when every bus is reporting in on 5G, you're going to see an improvement with that. So getting down to what our current status is, all buses that have been delivered since the year 2020, 33, already have this new equipment on. So we've been upgrading over time. And then, of course, the 62 new electric buses that will be coming in over the next year and a half will have this same exact equipment. So a total of 95 buses will have the latest equipment. So that leaves the balance of what's out there right now, approximately 127 vehicles with either it is sunsetted, the Generation 3 system sunsetted December of 2022. We're just limping it along. They like to call it Band-Aids. I tried to Band-Aid 3G, but then the cellular providers just shut it down on me. And then, of course, 59 buses with the IVN 4 systems. But I want to point out that I think the vehicles that are going to be brand newly added during this upgraded will be the 19, what I call contractor-provided service vehicles, and those would be the Jolly Trolley and the Looper Group vehicles, which have no system on them. And that is why they do not appear on the real-time network. Once we perform this upgrade, all of the PSTA buses and all of the family of PSTA buses out there will appear on the same real-time information system, whether it be app, website, or wherever you get your transit information from. Raj talked a lot about these things, but from the operator's perspective, I want to point out just a couple. On your top left, that is what they call the international screen. If you saw the screen that's in use right now, the operators have words in boxes, so they have to read things. As we all know, we're more visually able. It's easier to depict commands and functions when you can just see an icon instead of a word in a box. So that's definitely an improvement there. Turn-by-turn directions, so that an operator, if they're unfamiliar with the next turn, can certainly review it at a layover to reduce wrong turns. Clever Vision, this is what we call the content screens that you're seeing on new buses. This is the newest way that we will provide, we are doing it, providing information to our riding public as opposed to 8.5 and 11 sheets of paper taped to the back cabinet there. Transit signal priority, you'd know that from the Sunrunner service. That definitely helps the performance there. Of course, you heard me talk about fleet uniformity rather than try and support 3 generations of equipment. Now we just have one. And there should be definitely a increase in the reliability, but also reducing of latency, getting that information to the public, to their phones. So real quickly before I turn it over to Mr. Burns, obsolescence is never a good thing, but having a plan is, and that's what we've had in order to take care of this situation. That includes both software and the onboard vehicle equipment. And then, of course, when we have all of the vehicles upgraded, the quality of service to the passengers, they'll see an improvement, especially when now you can have a one-stop shop, one place to go to see all of the PSTA buses and the service providers on that informational outlet. I'll turn it over to Al Burns.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Raj. For the procurement considerations, there's a couple words in procurement world that we, directors don't like, and one of them is sole source, meaning that you can only get it from one place. And there are other companies that can provide this. However, in my professional opinion, and we did some research, it would not be financially beneficial for us to go out and procure. I would be bringing you an action item almost double, if not triple, the amount that we're bringing now. So the training, the infrastructure, all of that would be taken into account, and we would pretty much be starting from scratch. However, in accordance with Florida statute, we did post the sole source on our website and on DemandStar for the required number of days. We did receive some questions, but no one actually submitted a formal proposal saying that, hey, we could provide the same thing. We mentioned that we've been doing, Raj and Henry mentioned that we've been doing business with Clever Devices for a number of years, over a decade. However, we still did our due diligence to make sure that they're good financially and that they have not been debarred or suspended, and everything came back positive from a responsibility check perspective. We had some very good questions at the Finance Committee in regard to the fiscal impact of this. The hardware, the Ivans that Henry talked about, and the upgrade that Raj talked about, that is being 100% funded out of FTA funds, and there's a matrix in there, and that's at an approximate value of $2.6 million. What I did was I entered into a multi-year or a 5-year service and maintenance, a software maintenance agreement with Clever Devices, and I'm proud to say that we locked those rates in over the 5 years of 3% each year. That is coming out of operating funds, and that has a fiscal impact of $1.8 million. On the sustainability and DEI side, Clever Devices, along with PSTA, were one of the first to be part of APTA's Racial Equity Commitment Pilot Program. And we're still in it, and they are still committed to that. Additionally, Clever Devices, they've been awarded a bronze level recognition from APTA's Sustainability, which we're a member of as well. Madam Chair, what I'm bringing before you today is a recommendation to approve a 5-year contract with Clever Devices for a total contract amount not to exceed $4,500,000. And as the Finance Committee knows, that this was unanimously approved by the Finance Committee. And if there's any question, myself or my colleagues would be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Did we have any public comment requests on this item?
I didn't receive anything.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from board members? Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Henry and Al, for that very detailed presentation. So, Al, I agree with you. I hate being locked into these sole procurement things, particularly when it comes to technology providers, because you feel like you're truly locked in, and the cost and the pain of change is significant. With that said, I agree with you that the cost and the pain of change is probably not worth it, and Clever Devices is a good company, and they do some pretty slick stuff. So my question is, what was the life cycle of version 3 and 4, and what do we expect the life cycle of version 5 to be?
I'm not technical, so I'm gonna hand that over to Henry to answer, sir. Very good question.
So we had, let's see, about 12 years, probably 2 years too long on the Generation 3. We're actually going into overtime right now on that. Generation 4 was about the same, 10 years. And with Generation 5, if I can be frank in my discussion, conversation with Clever, I said, I'm not going back to the board for 10 years.
Right.
Not doing it. That's our expectation, and that's what we're going to require. So on the hardware side, it's 10 years.
Okay, good deal. Madam Chair, move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we'll continue our discussion with Commissioner Cox.
Thank you. Henry, thank you, Henry. Did you mention this would be extended also to Uber and Lyft? Did I hear that?
No, let me clarify that. Not Uber and Lyft or the mobility side. This is going to be for our Jolly Trolley and Looper
Okay.
contractors.
Okay, so it's not going to the MOD or to Access? Excuse me. As a former dispatcher and operations manager, our former provider, I was super impressed by the mapping systems that both are, this is you, Raj, right? On Sunrunner, as well as the division, we use North County, South County for the fixed route dispatch, meaning that colors are used for the buses, that may be running a little later, so on and so forth, and how the computer system actually keeps them going in a good sequence. And that being said, Al, you mentioned that we don't need Stone Age, and we certainly don't need Stone Age, but I can tell you right now, all the providers on MOD have their own dispatch systems, which would be Uber, Lyft, Bay Area Metro, and wheelchair transport, and they're very efficient at it. And then at Access, we have TransDev, Bay Area Metro and User, BAM and our Bay Area Metro and User have their own dispatch system. PSTA provides the dispatch system for TransDev, and it's Stone Age. It is totally Stone. The mapping is Stone Age. It's not up to snuff, and I've really, and I've said this once, I've said it twice, and I'll say it again. I really would like to see that dispatch system be modernized like we're using right now at PSTA. I think it's a disservice to the provider to have them have a PSTA provide a dispatch system that simply is not up to date, up to par, and up to standards, and it costs PSTA money. And in the fact that we saw in the report from our consultants in September 2022 that it was costing us money. We're now awaiting their new visit. Have they visited yet? The consultants visited us yet for?
They have.
And when will we get the results from that?
I'm not sure. I can find out.
Okay, I mean, it's very important because we need
haven't
to
gotten
come,
it yet.
and we're losing money every day. I mean, truly every day. On deadheading, roughly $1,000 a day. And we need to get this fixed. We've kicked it down the can way too long. Or kicked the can down the road way too long. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then, we do have a motion and a second. Could we please open the voting system? Commissioners, please enter your votes.
I'm not up here, I'll vote yes.
13.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board.
And next, we have item 6D. With our same team members presenting the proposed contract with Duke Energy to install our much-needed electric charging infrastructure for our zero-emission buses. Sir,
I'm back, Madam Chair and board members.
welcome back.
Never left, really. Going back to our tour, and my colleague, Mr. Lukasik, they had like sweet seats at a stadium where they could overlook the parking lot, or where our facility, where all the infrastructure, where all the buses are parked. And it was great, and I'm looking at Commissioner Gao, and I remember him smiling and a lot of questions. This is a two-part action item, but it only requires one vote. It's to approve a one-time contract with Duke Energy, one for the installation of 48 bus chargers for not to exceed amount of $9,500,000. Thank you, Henry. And Part B is approved to reimburse Duke Regulated for installation of 4 transformers for an amount not to exceed $475,000. My colleague and I, we came before you before, and I think we asked for approval to procure these buses. And now it's time that the buses are getting ready to start coming in, that we have to charge these buses. And to talk to you about the details on what all this equipment and this $9.5 million is for, I'll leave that to my colleague, Mr. Lucchese.
Morning again. Not only is this a request item, but I also figured I'd use it as an update on the electric buses coming in. So back December 21, the board did approve a 60-bus purchase with Gillig, in addition to high-capacity chargers. As you can see, the first 3 have arrived. That's what they look like right there. I can tell you the first 2 were delivered here on a flatbed, but we were very surprised when they told us the third one was driven across country from California, which is typical of the way transit buses are. So they did develop a network along the way to stop off and charge the bus, and we ran analytics on that journey, and we were seeing ranges on a state of charge of almost 350 miles, which is phenomenal. We can come back to a little bit that later. So the current delivery schedule, if the board remembers, this was a 5-year plan. It has somewhat been compressed down just on the delivery schedule to about a 1.5-year plan. We're going to take a delivery of another 3 vehicles, and then 2024 is going to be very busy for us in the maintenance department. Well over 43 vehicles are going to arrive throughout the course of the year. So it really works out to be about 1 per week for the year, and then we'll have some the first 8 weeks, remaining 13, January, February of 2025. So you're going to see a lot of new buses being rolled out. This is what the transition looks like over the next 1.5 to 2 years. 12 we can see in calendar year 2023 for what's out there for total electric vehicles. If folks if members of the board remember, we do have 6 currently. So those are aggregate totals. And then 55 by the end of 24, and then the big 68 by the end of 2025. So infrastructure, we are currently installing 12 chargers, which are manufactured by ChargePoint right now. They are 200 kilowatt capacity, so they're considered high-capacity, fast chargers. We do have the ability to charge a bus in 4 hours, assuming that it came in with 0 left on the tank, so to speak. Phase 1's going very well. Yes, Duke Energy 1 is also doing that. Full commissioning and energizing will be tentatively scheduled for August 7th, so we're excited about that. Real quickly, this is where we are in our bus lot. 4 rows will be ultimately what's under construction with chargers and transformers. These are some pictures from the construction throughout the last piece, the most exciting piece. You can see transformers being lifted down and also the large switch gears being placed on the pad. Getting up close, this is what the chargers look like out in the lot. The large rectangular gray boxes are what we call the power blocks. That's what actually allows us to get the 200 kW. And the orange things that look like a fuel dispenser is where we plug the bus in. You kind of see to the right, that's what it is. It is actually still called a dispenser, just not with carbon-based fuels. Phase 2, as you can see, will cover even farther expanse of the parking lot. Same pattern, the green dots represent where the chargers are actually placed, and down at the bottom of your screen is where 4 more 2.5 MVA megavolt transformers from Duke Regulated, the largest coastal rated transformers in the Duke Regulated inventory, will be placed, and then the additional 3,000 amp switch gears in front of them to complete the project. So, real quick, before I turn it back over to Al for the procurement, turnkey installation of another 48 chargers with Duke Energy One over the next 1.5 years. That will run in parallel with the expected bus delivery timeline. And just as FYI, each transformer and each switchgear, just think big circuit breaker, can do 12 chargers at a time. And that's why there's 5 total going in. And then it is FTA funded, and I will turn it over to Mr. Burns. Follow-up.
Thank you, Henry. In early May, we released a RFP in accordance with all PSTA's policies and procedures, and we posted it on our website and on DemandStar. We received 2 proposals, one from A&K Energy Conservation Incorporated and Duke Energy One Incorporated. Inside your packet, there's a matrix that shows you the evaluation criteria that was used. And as recommended from the Finance Committee, we added the matrix that showed the scoring on how we came to the decision of going with Duke. We did do a responsibility check on Duke, even though we are, as Henry said, they're doing phase 1, but we went through the federal procurement process with this, and we had to make sure that they're not debarred and suspended, and they're in good financial standing. And Madam Chair and board members, I could tell you without a doubt, they definitely are. The fiscal impact of this. This is 100%, this is FTA grant funded for this project. This is FTA grant funded for this project. The same as I did on the last action item on the sustainability and DEI impact. And I'm leaning towards Commissioner Fig Sanders when I talk about the DEI. We put a 25.1% DEI goal on this. And I was pleasantly pleased when Duke met that goal. And it has a dollar value of $2,174,000. Inside your packet, you notice that this is in the Tampa Bay area. The company that they're doing work is bringing value work. However, they're not in Pinellas County. They are in Hillsborough County, but it does go to our region. Duke is a member of various organizations, and they, just like here with our Human Resources Director, we have ERG groups. They also have employee resource groups, and it bodes well to them. They also have environmental, and I think, talking to Duke, they are very good environmental stewards. Once again, Madam Chair, this is a 2-part, but only one vote is required. A, approve a one-time contract with Duke Energy One Incorporated for the installation of 48 bus chargers for the not-to-exceed amount of $9,500,000. And B, approve to reimburse Duke Regulated for installation of 4 transformers for an amount not to exceed $475,000. And I just want to let you know that the Duke Regulated, that's just like our regular electric bill that you pay every month, and that is required, and basically in layman's terms that I can understand, They have to energize all the equipment in order for Henry to be able to start charging buses, and that's what that $475,000 is for. As a friendly reminder only, this was unanimously approved at the Finance Committee, and Chair Driscoll, if there's any questions, Henry or I will be more than happy to answer them.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve this item, and do we need that clarified, both items?
Yeah, it's both items, yes.
Both items.
All right.
Second, both items?
Thank you. Just want to make sure that's clarified. Did we have any public comment on this item?
I did not receive any cards.
All right, thank you. There's no request for discussion. I appreciate your work on this, and I am sure others will join me in expressing our appreciation for the FTA, for their continued partnership through this grant and other efforts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, seeing that there's no other request for discussion, could we open the voting system, please? Commissioners, please enter your votes, if you can. 11.
To the highly motivated procurement specialists, are they going to reimburse us for putting miles on our bus driving that way over here?
Are we,
I'm just being funny.
I
Oh,
think.
no, trust me, I appreciate,
Oh, right. Okay, perfect. Motion passes. Thank you so much.
Electricity is very cheap.
Next, we'll go to our reports and other items from Brad Miller. Brad, do you want to give us an update on the reports and also with any upcoming meeting subjects?
Right, so I'll be quick on this. You can see the performance reports in your packet. Ridership was up in the month of June by 10%, so that was very positive. If you look at the graph, also, we've seen a nice, something we've been working on for a while, but an uptick in on-time performance, which is good to see. And the action item that you took earlier today, I think will improve that further on the Clever Devices. In the month of June, we had a very successful Pride Parade park and ride shuttle that we provide to that service, and we got reports that over 5,000, we had over 5,000 riders on the Sunrunner going to downtown St. Petersburg on that day or weekend on that, I can't remember, but very, very good ridership on that weekend as well. Upcoming meeting subjects, the month of August, we will have August 9th. Hopefully, the members of the Executive Committee and the Legislative Committee have that on your calendar. We're going to be having those two meetings that day. Ron Pierce and hopefully even Harry Glenn will be here at the Legislative Committee to start having a draft, our first discussions about the 2024 legislative priorities for PSTA. And so we'll take that up. And then the Executive Committee is going to be looking at a couple of different things. We're going to be looking at the committee structure, proposed changes that we talked about at the workshop back in May, as well as a new performance scorecard for PSTA that gets a little bit more specific on identifying efficiency measures, as we discussed at the workshop. So that's on August 9th. I think we'll also maybe have an update on some of the discussions and some of the public comment we heard today on what we might be able to work with the sheriff on safety and Safety Beach, or the concerns that was raised there. And then one of the main items in August we'll have is we'll start to get we're already getting emails about the service adjustments that you approved today, and we will provide an update on where we stand on that at the planning committee and then at the board meeting, and then we'll have a presentation on our capital plan, our proposed capital plan for fiscal year 24, and that's a multi-year plan. So, and then of course we'll get into September. Again, the action items that were taken today on the budget and the service sort of it's a marathon, not a sprint or the first inning. This is just the list that we're now going to go out into the public and try to advertise and get specific information on those routes so that we can come back with you with some more thoughtful recommendations on the least impactful ways in which we can balance our budget. But a very good discussion. I thank you all today. Oh, and my final thing, which, as you all know, one of the things I very much focus on and I'm very passionate about is workforce development. And I am honored to work with a number of the top leaders in the whole transit industry, as shown by their acceptance in the top leadership program in the United States for public transportation, Leadership APTA. Myself being a graduate many moons ago, and Al Burns is in the current Leadership APTA class, which is 35 members from across the United States. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be announcing this yet, but I'm just going to. I see Miss Tamika White. Can you stand up in the back there? Tamika White will be inducted into the class of 2024, Leadership APTA. Yes. Tamika is sort of going to be a teacher's pet of the program because she leads the PSTA workforce development activities in our HR department, you know, our leadership PSTA and everything like that. And so Leadership APTA is right up her alley.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll be great at that. So congratulations. And that's really,
All right.
hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other business to discuss, or are there any board member comments? Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just sharing that August 25th will be the last TBARTA meeting. So after that, it's official. It's all wrapped up and closed. So it will be a sad moment.
Yes.
The interesting part of all of that is I just left the National Association of Counties Conference in Austin, Texas, and we were talking about transportation, and some of you may know that we had presentations before TBARTA about a expedited flight service, if you will, from St. Pete down to South Florida. The first runs would be unmanned. They're like planes, but they're small. That would have been flying from St. Petersburg down to South Florida. We'll get you there in very little time, but of course, it was kind of pricey, about $150, but if you're a C-suite executive, that got you where you needed to go fairly quickly. And so we have been speaking about that back and forth, and South Florida was in a session, and they were talking about the service that they will be implementing, where they are unmanned flights, and they will go from city to city in South Florida. So it was kind of a bittersweet moment that I wasn't able to weigh in and say St. Petersburg or, Pinellas County is going to be a part of that. But that will be our very last meeting, so I will certainly bring back whatever is discussed, because we do have a few things that we were trying to ferret out to either PSTA or the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to kind of take over in planning stages, because they had gone that far, and see what we could do with the revenue to also bring that revenue over to those two entities, so that they could continue the work if they desired. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Did anyone else have something? Of course, Commissioner Schulman.
Of course, you've been to our committee meetings. I actually had a question on the board reports. There was a 333% increase in severe incidents from this time last year on board the buses, and access and fixed route complaints are more than double what they were from a year ago. And I didn't know if you had any additional thoughts or information or things we should be looking at based on those.
On the incidents, I noticed that as well, and we're trying to delve into exactly what those might be. I think that is a case of better reporting of other incidents, not on the buses, but at our transportation centers, primarily at Grand Central in St. Petersburg, of just better tracking other incidents that happen with riders or, customers or other folks that are there. But I'll have more information on that soon. And then on the access complaints, that is directly related to better, an easier way to complain. Before, it was a subjective thing, when we just had one, the customer service agent, when they were booking a ride, if someone said, well, I also, last Tuesday my ride was late, or some kind of problem, they probably wouldn't track that. And now there's this, in the phone tree, there's a separate button if you want to register a complaint. So we're getting more complaints because we're tracking it better because the customers leave a complaint directly. And that is, we've seen that up for about last couple of months, ever since we put that option in on the phone tree.
Thank you for that. I also, based on the public comment earlier this morning, I think it might be helpful to track complaints on Sunrunner as a separate number, if possible, so that we can see how that is progressing, and then also changes and things that we implement to make things better and address the community concerns. We can see how that's actually having an impact over time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I recently had an opportunity to do a ride-along with Pinellas Park Police Department, and I was made aware during that ride-along of the high call volume that originates from our transit, the PS8 transit station on, I don't know if that's, is it 62nd Avenue or, yeah. Anyways, and kind of witnessed some of the ongoings there. And I've got a report that I could certainly share with Brad and the rest of the board that shows what the call volume is and how that call volume has increased. And a lot of what those calls originate from sounded very familiar to some of the comments we heard this morning regarding St. Pete Beach. So I think that might be a good board or committee discussion, see what it is that we can do to address that, because it discourages people to ride. So I think that's something that the board should take a little closer look at. And I can, I'll email you that report.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Brad, if you could just check on something for me. I got an email had forwarded to me about report of poor behavior by PSTA hired quote-unquote surveyors. And this came from a Devin Henderson. I think he was accidentally included, looks like he was accidentally included in a PSTA internal email. And it said that we've been getting complaints over the last 2 weeks regarding poor behavior by quote-unquote surveyors hired by PSTA. I'll keep this email brief and spare the details for now. Please advise if it continues, I won't allow them to continue to ride. So if you could look into that and let me know what that is, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, our next meeting will be August 23rd, 2023 at 9 a.m. Thanks, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I made it back, all good. I actually even caught a little bit of an earlier flight. So, I actually. Are we going to talk? Okay. So, yeah. A couple hours. Everything.
Yeah, no problems at all.
Always changing.
When I went to go